All right. So, Paul, I want to say thank you so much for accepting the invitation to come on the Dez Experience, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So, we're going to get right into it, okay?
Indeed, we are.
All right. So, your first question is talk about your life story from when you were a child all the way up to now.
Well, I had quite an unusual introduction to the world. And my surname's Paul Harrington, but on my birth certificate it says Paul Wu. Now, the reason for that is that my mother, my birth mother, she was married to a Chinese man called Mr. Wu, and she had an affair with my biological father, who was a Ghanaian chauffeur driver. So she got pregnant. Obviously, I think was thinking it was going to be Mr. Wu's, and obviously the came to the birth, and obviously my mother was white, Mr. Wu was Chinese and white, and I've popped out, and clearly I wasn't Mr. Wu's child. So that was I mean, I obviously was there, and and I know I can't obviously remember anything, but I'm sure there was quite a scene. But he gave her an ultimatum to say, well, either you stay with the child or you stay with me. And she stayed with Mr. Wu, and I was put into care. Now, such a strange thing, and this was in 1966. This is when England won the World Cup, so it's quite a specific year.
Right.
My I was put into care, and then after about 3 or 4 weeks, I was placed in care with a professional fosterers, which became my family, the Harringtons. So I was there for a while. My mother, and I always say my mother who brought me up, Mrs. Harrington, Dinah Harrington, name was amazing, amazing human being. She already had three of her own children, and she was fostering children at the time. So after about um, 6 months of being in care, Tower Hamlets came over and spoke to my parents. Said, "Look, we're going to put him into up for adoption or care," and they said, "No, look, we you know we want to keep him." So I ended up staying and becoming a Harrington. And my mother had another three children, so I've got three brothers, three sisters, three older, three younger, and I'm slap bang in the middle, literally the black sheep of the family, bang in
Oh,
the
no.
middle,
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. It's definitely a sliding doors moment, and I think, as I've got older, I feel much more spiritual. I think the universe definitely intervened then, because I had a wonderful childhood, had amazing, and still got brothers and sisters, and certainly it's crafted who I've become today. So that was the beginning. So quite an introduction to the world.
Oh, absolutely. A lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't mess it around. And my story's been quite eclectic, and some ways I feel, um, as I've got older, I feel as if it's I'm living more sort of in a simulation. It feels more coded. Some unusual things have happened to me, which I think as I've got older, I've got more tuned in. I'm much more tuned into to things that more so probably when as I was younger, I was sort of more curious. I've got more curious about life and life existence and who we are and why we're being here. But I've had quite an interesting story. So yeah, I mean, it's to lead on from there. I had amazing childhood. My parents, my mum was an incredible woman. I mean, she was like superwoman. She had seven children, and she used to do like she used to be a nurse. She used to do our ironing, her cleaner, cooking. And we used to go on holidays, to go on these amazing holidays. Now, I was in the middle, so I used to go holiday in UK to
Right.
all these castles and stuff, and all these amazing castles and camping. I remember it being very rainy and wet, and I do remember they had this minibus, which was probably in those days the first people carrier. So it's a transit minibus. And as we went to places like Wales, we used to have to get out the bottom of the hill because Wales was quite heavy, and we used to get out the bottom of the hill, and we used to had to push the van at the top because it couldn't take this amount of people. So we did a lot of travelling, and then I went to the second stage because then we had sort of a two-tier of children. So with the three older, and then another three younger than me, and then we started getting a bit more extravagant and started to go in places like France, south of France, and camping, and I remember those being amazing memories. Um, but it was a weird thing because I think when I got to about 7 years old, I never ever felt any different. The only difference in my brothers and sisters were white, blonde, blue-eyed white, and I was black, but there was never feeling any difference. These were my brothers, my sisters, my mum. I had an amazing relationship with my mother. I think it was, I was very affectionate with my mum, and my dad was very, we got, it was, and my brothers and sisters. So we were very, very close. And I never felt any difference at all. I didn't even understand what racism was. I didn't even understand it. I was just young. My brothers and sisters, my brothers and sisters. I think that's one of the beauties of being a child. You don't really see that. It's only when I went to, I started experiencing it when I started going to a junior school, and they were calling me. I remember this was a school. This was in the Essex. This is in the 70s, and there was was starting there's certain names kids would call me, racist names. Now I know as fact they didn't know what they were saying. They were picking it up because in those days, racism in UK was it's kind of somewhat accepted. You'd have programs like Upstairs, Downstairs, where they'd use the slang wog and coon and stuff like that. This was on a program. You had the black and white minstrels on TV where it was acceptable for white people dressed in blackface. So this was that. My parents hated it. They would like really anti it. So they weren't conscious of having this black child. They didn't plan it. It was just happened, but they were obviously conscious about things like, and they didn't like that anyway, any of that sort of stuff. So I started experiencing it then, and then when I went to school, I mean, there's teachers they used to call me names, and my teacher said, "Don't let them call it," and I didn't know what they were calling me because I couldn't understand what it was. It's
Right.
only I went up to senior school. This is a Catholic school as well in Harlow, which was predominantly I was a bit older now, and now I started picking things up because you'd have football players come and playing on pitches, and there'd be bananas thrown on the pitch, and they really see. So I'm starting now to pick it up. I remember the World Cup back in those days. And all the whistles and all the things. So I started to pick up. I love football. So I started realizing people like Viv Anderson, these are players, black players, and you could see there was booze and bananas thrown on the pitch and stuff. So now I'm picking stuff up. And in senior school, it accelerated because there was a big thing then with a thing called the skinheads. Skinheads then in the UK was a big thing, and it was like a mass hysteria. Everybody, it swept through the country, and everybody wanted to be a skinhead. Um, and I was getting in a lot of trouble. Now it's quite evident that there's a problem because I was going to this school and there was three black kids in the school and a couple of Asian kids. So now I'm fighting every day. Now my brothers, fortunately for me, growing up, I had two older brothers, and anyone who's got older brothers and you're the younger brother will know that you get bashed up a little bit, but in a good wrestle way. You're going to toughen up because your older
Yep.
brother's going to let you know about it, and so
Yep.
that was a really good thing because I was used to scrapping and I needed to have that. That was like my sort of MMA sort of pre-school training, which really kept me in good stead. So I was fighting a lot. And it started getting a bit out of control until I had an incident with a school teacher where I was crawling around the classroom. And they had like a cinema on, and I had a big afro at the time. And
Okay.
the lights went on, and this teacher grabbed my hair and dragged me in front of the school and in
What?
front of the classroom. Yeah, grabbed me hair across the class. And I was getting a bit older now, and I told him to let go of my hair, and he wouldn't. I said, "Let go of my hair," and he wouldn't. And the third time, I just had this rage come through me, and I cracked him. I got this chair, and I just threw this chair, and then I ended up just going into this blur of anger.
Right.
Um, so I remember running out of school. My friend Glenn Miller, actually, not the jazz player, but Glenn Miller, a friend of mine, he'd already been thrown out because we were just mischievous kids.
Of course.
And he was going, "What's happened?" And I said, "Look, I got thrown out because of this 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 teacher." Anyway, I rang my mum up. I had some coins and thrown the coins down into the telephone box. No mobiles then, so in the telephone box, I told my mum. My mum was boom, straight up to the thing. "Meet me outside the school." She came straight up to the school.
Yeah.
I explained to her. Now she knows what I'm like. I'm not that sort of kid, but she was pretty angry. So she went into the teacher with the headmaster. They wanted to expel me. She wanted the teacher expelled, to be fired, and they come to a mutual agreement. I wouldn't go to his classrooms anymore, and they, I know, and I wouldn't be suspended, like chucked out of school. So that
Right.
was kind of quite a thing. And after that, things calmed down because the teachers in the class, the kids in the classroom realised, oh, there was that, obviously he must be a bit mad. So that was a good thing. It's a terrible thing to have such a violent thing that happens to stop you being um, attacked. But that certainly changed because people started getting a bit wary of me then. And so things changed from then. After that, I was going to Boy Scouts, and there was a few incidents there, and there was one horrible incident on the train. I was going up to the West End, and there was a friend of mine, Eddie Goulding, and Lisa and Jackie, and there was a station called Debden. I remember seeing these skins, and they were on the station. And one thing you had to be very careful in those days was skinheads with red laces, because
Mm.
they were notoriously most racist. So National Front was really, really everywhere now. And I remember them coming on the train, and I had my head down. I was thinking, I was begging them, please don't come, please don't come, please don't come. And they came in, and I remember they sort of flicked a cigarette at me, and then they must have been about 19. I was about 13, 14. And then they just started attacking me, and they grabbed Eddie was screaming, the girls were screaming at holding Eddie back. So that was a really brutal attack. That was really bad. I remember we got off the train, everyone, we were young then, we were just kids. I've got a 15-year-old son now, so when talking about it now, I can't even imagine it. But, I didn't say anything to my parents because I knew that they had, they would be overprotective. So I never mentioned anything to them. But that was a really brutal time. But
Right.
everything changed quite rapidly because Epping was a small town, and they had a few nightclubs in there, but particularly a couple called Billie Jean's. And the first club they had actually was a place called Treetops. It's by Epping Station. And I sort of went for that transition. It's so funny looking at, like I say, my son, how quickly, and anyone who's got a child who's in 10, 11, 12, when they get to that teen thing, it just suddenly, your baby's gone. Do you know what I mean? You've got this
It's over.
child, this teenager. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Where were you? Right, Dave,
You were just
you,
little crawling
you
around.
try and get that love. You try and get that hug from your son. He's like, "Dad, get off, get off. Why we used to hug? What's going on?" So it's really hard to make that adjustment. And I have
Right.
learned from something, and I say this now because a friend of mine told me it's very, very normal for anyone who's got a teenage boy, for the boys to be very get off and a bit rude because it's their way of making they're becoming a man. It's
Yep.
normal. They're meant to be. No, no. I used to sort of take it really personally, and now it's sort of changed. But I realise now it's their thing. So I was going through that age, and I didn't want to be going to don't want to be going to scouts. It was very middle class and very sort of nerdy. And now I want to go out, and there was girls, and I was going through puberty, and I wanted girls, and I was going to this place. And in those days there was break dancing, so I was getting, and there was the guy Jeffrey Dahmer, I think, not Jeffrey Dahmer, he's the killer. Jeffrey Daniels. He was
Yes.
on top of the pops, and he did the moonwalk. He
Yep.
did that moonwalk, and it freaked everything out. And I was like, right, that's it. I want to be. So I go to Treetops. I'm doing my body pump, but I must have been around. It was round quite after that attack at Debden, and I started knocking around with the local lads in Epping. And there was a thing that was coming then called being a casual. Now, being a casual, before then it was skins. And I say something quickly about the skins. The skins were everywhere, and then there was different groups. You had skins, you had punks, and you had this new group called the casuals. And these casuals were wearing Burberry, Aquascutum, Fila, all designer clothes. So my mate Tony, I was in this club. He goes, "Why don't you come to this ground? Why don't you come up to Spurs? The Spurs are playing Liverpool the weekend." It was around Christmas. Anyway, we went up to this ground. I thought, yeah, why not? I was not secretly, I was a Liverpool supporter for no other reason apart from Liverpool won everything. And you get that probably with a lot of, I don't know if it's in America, the best team, whether it be LA Lakers. Why? I don't even live in LA, you live in Georgia. Why? Because they win everything. So it was the same thing. I had that, yeah, they win everything. It was the Liverpool.
Right.
So I went to the game, and it was so packed. The stadium stack was no chairs, no chairs. That you were sort of sliding in this sort of weird movement. And with Tiny was going, get to the triangle. We got to the triangle, and there was lighters being thrown everywhere, coins getting thrown, people running on the pitch fighting. There was screaming, wanker signs, shout, just a pure absolute carnage. And I was like, this is fantastic. I absolutely couldn't. The energy. I was young. And it was like we were Tottenham, they were Liverpool. Wow! So I remember leaving. Now my mate Tony was a very clever man, and I
Right.
remember him leaving. And when we left, I remember saying it. I said the Liverpool fans had the best clothes. They had all the designer clothes. I said, Dad, because they were playing in Europe. So they used to go into the West End, go into Europe, and they used to rob all the shops in Europe.
Yeah.
So we come back, we were wearing Pringle and Fila and Polo jeans, and we cut our Bennett and Calls at the bottom so it'd flare slightly. But these boys were wearing Fila, Armani, Burberry, designer clothes. And I remember Tony saying on the way back, he said, listen, we should set up our own firm, our own little firm. And so we came up. It's so funny now because I'm so much not that person. I'm much older than, but I recognise it now with being a young boy. So we called ourselves the EJF, Epping Junior Firm. So all of a sudden we started building up our numbers. We had numbers that are about 40 strong. So we're all of us, and we'd go out on these robbing sprees. We were like Vikings and robbing instead of robbing gold and silver, we'd go up to the West End, straight on the Central Line, and we'd organise like we'd do rob up all the shops. So it'd be like we'd have like people go in, tag the codes up, and we would just run my parent, and we'd be robbing like Simpsons was a shop, Selfridges was a shop. Can I say allegedly, just in case they come for me now? Allegedly, this all happened, right? So we were robbing up all these shops, and we come back at the back of this club when we're selling stuff. And my mum and dad go, Paul, oh my God, you dress so well. Where did you get that? Where did you get? Oh, my friend lent it to me. My friend Lacoste and all this stuff. So we were robbing up, and then this other club called Billie Jean's opened, this nightclub, and that's when things started getting heavier because then we were getting into like there was other there were other gangs in London. So casuals became all over London. So there was other casuals coming around, and we started getting in many fights, and there was like it started getting quite dangerous because we started getting tooled up, and there was knives and koshes and tear gas, and like a friend of mine, it got very dangerous. A friend of mine got his face slashed. There was a lot of Stanley knives cutting, and there was a stabbing in a place called Twankham's Alley. It's a stupid, weird name. You know what happened with the T, by the way? Everyone
Right.
got rid of that. Twankham's Alley was a friend of mine got stabbed. So it started getting is firms and firms, and we were so. I mean, we would cap with EJF, and anyone coming to our territory, I'd spray on the thing. You come into it was very young, dumb, childish, crazy stuff. But I was in a firm. No one would mess with me no more. I was in my little clique, and we were like,
Yep.
we were about it, about it, about it. So we just wanted it. And that went on for some time, but it got really out of control because Billy Jean's was run by a guy called Robert Pelosi. And there was so much thing. And on my Instagram, you'll see all of the clippings for some reason, beautifully. My friend kept all the clippings of all the violence. I've got all the clippings. This is back in 1982, long time ago, with all the clippings of all the violence of where it's come because everybody from London was coming to this little town to go to this club, and it was our territory. And we were casuals, and we were young, and we were stupid, no question about it. We were terribly, but we were in a gang, and it was our gang. So that went on for many years, and I started getting a bit nervous when my friend Steve, he got slashed. These guys knocked on his door. His mum answered. He went to the door, and he's got something slashed in his face. He had 20 stitches down his face. My other friend got stabbed. There was it started getting quite dangerous, really quite heavy. There was bricks going through windows because the problem, what happened, we'd go to Billie Jean's. There's girls that we would date, and there's girls with other firms used to date, and then the girls used to break up and start giving out numbers. So you'd have people ringing up our parents, going, "Look, we're going to iron your son out. We're going to iron your son." Ironing mean we're going to you
Yeah.
know what an iron does, irons them
Yep.
out. So there was a lot of that. So it's very East London slang. I mix my voice sometimes goes a bit East London, so I bring it back. We were going to duff them up. So there's a lot of that going on. Um, but what happened? I moved to we were sort of just doing the same thing, going to football. Football was kicking off, but it was more sort of the local stuff, which was more dangerous. And then I got to stage. I started working part time. Oh no, before that, I went to. This is another part. I went to college, Loughton College, and this is a big part. I shouldn't have forgot this bit. I went to Loughton College. Now I didn't do very well at school. I only got one art level, but I remember going to Loughton College, and I became friendly with a few black kids in the school. So suddenly I'm starting to knock around with a few black boys there.
Right.
And there's a particular boy called Akazi Okuru, and he was a Nigerian lad, and we become very good friends. In fact, he'd come down to Epping. It was just a nice thing, and I started learning a bit more about black culture. I remember I'd go around his house, and his mum had this room, and no one was allowed in there. But for some reason, this room was like this special room, which was covered with all the sofa was covered in plastic. It was the room. No one was allowed in it. But she let me go in it, and she started asking about my background. I told her my dad was from Ghana and the story, and she started sort of teaching me more about African culture and Nigeria and jollof. She started cooking me food, so she really educated me a lot about my. She made looking back now, she really made me understand a lot more about myself. And I never forget. Now this is how my mind was. I was 17 years old, and we went to this place called a car. I don't know if you've heard in London a thing called Notting Hill Carnival. Right, Notting Hill Carnival is like a big festival where you got all it's carnival. You know what a
Right.
carnival is. So it's
Right.
carnival, and it's predominantly where it started with the West Indian started it, and it became a massive thing. And we went there, and I remember going there, and Casey was there, and Chooks was there, and I remember them. Look, I couldn't believe there were so many black people in the UK. I couldn't. It was. I was in shock. I was like, oh my God. And then I'm seeing these beautiful black women moving in ways I couldn't. It just shot out, and they were laughing at me because they were seeing me going, "What the fuck?" Because they knew obviously I'm in
Yeah.
shock.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's like I knew when I was a kid. I love chicken. I don't know why I had a relationship with chicken more than my other brothers and sisters. And this, I just love more chicken. Why do you love chicken so much? I don't know. It must be something in my DNA. I love chicken. And when I went to when I went to the carnival, then there was just, I just like, well, I mean, they were laughing their heads off because they were, I don't, but Chuck, it just, that was like a really beautiful thing. So that was kind of my education. I didn't do particularly well at college, but college was very important for me because of it was culturally gave me awareness of other cultures. There was different people at the college, and there was Chinese, and there was just different races of people. So that was really important. But we were still I was still up to mischief. Although that I mean, my friend Kay's was into jazz, so we were going to like Ronnie Scott's and jazz. But I was still up to mischief, and we were still in that little gang. A little bit older now, and things were getting quite dangerous. And then we decided to go to. We were getting older, and we decided to getting close to our 20s, and we decided to go to LA. We decided to go for just go to America. So we went to Santa Monica. We stayed in Santa Monica for a bit, and I remember I used to run the down to Venice Beach, and there was a guy juggling chainsaws. I remember the guy juggling. There's a famous guy that goes around on his roller skates over in there in Venice Beach. So that was really nice time. And then, but when I came back, there was a shift in this whole scene. Instead of the violence now, there was talks about this new scene called this rave scene. So there's this new scene that was coming on. Everyone's talking about ecstasy. It was all in the papers. It was all papers talking about ecstasy. And when I got back, a hold of my other group of friends, they went to Southeast Asia. So I was on a bit of a loose end. So a friend of mine, I was a state agent by now. I got a job as a state agent, and a friend of mine told me, "Look, you should come to this club called Legends. It's in Old Berlin Street." So I went to this club. I remember one minute I'm wearing Burberry Aquascutum, the next minute I'm wearing these stripy jackets and stuff. And I remember going to this club, and they took this thing called a Dove, and it was an ecstasy. And well, I can assure you, there's after I took that thing, my life massively changed. It was an incredible moment. It was a um a real moment. So yeah, I took this thing called ecstasy, and it blew me away. It really did, and it opened up. I didn't go to football after that, and I started getting heavily into the rave scene. I really got into the rave scene. I got quite. That was probably the beginning of an intense moment, not intense moment, an intense scene. And I loved it. It was a positive thing because
Right.
I think MDMA, I'm not ever, I don't think, anything of anything is bad, but that sort of floods your brain with serotonin. And it's a lot of loving and hugging. And so I really got into that scene, accelerated into that scene really rapidly. And everything changed then. It was an amazing time. I was raving. I was going to a club called Legends, and then I'd go to another club called Milk. I'd go out on the Saturday to Limelight, and there was a girl on the door. She was a picker. Had a girl called Lara. I don't know how, but I ended up cracking onto her, and that accelerated my whole introduction to the London club scene, the rave scene. And that was monumental to say the least.
Right. Yeah, you got
Uh,
going on, man.
yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, that's just I'm trying to compress it because there's lots of bits and pieces in the middle, but I'm trying to compress it. Um, but from then, I raved so much. I loved it so. The thing with I've understood many things. Des, can I quickly use the bathroom? I just drank. Can I have a quick 2 minutes, chop? So I've just literally dying for a pee. Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Sorry, man. Sorry. Cheers. 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 Sorry, buddy.
No problem.
Cheers. Sorry, old boy. I'm back. Right.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that. So, yeah. So I was in the I was raving, and then I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. The thing with ecstasy, it's not an addictive drug,
Right,
unlike other drugs. It's not addictive. But what was addictive to me was the scene, the actual rave scene itself. So I was going out on a Friday to Limelight, then I would go to Legends on a Saturday, and then I'd go to the park, this club called the Park on a Sunday. So I was sort of out and out, and eventually it got to the stage where I couldn't. I was just raving. I was so embraced with the scene. I was just raving so hard. And I was going to say just before just trick my brain for a second that I understand happiness, and the thing with happiness is sometimes is understand with ecstasy can make you to such a unnaturally euphoric high, and you feel such emotion. You feel such amazing feeling, and it took me to different, maybe quite creative, and took me into different dimensions. But
right,
I looking back now, I understand where I found an addiction in a different way, and it wasn't addiction into the MDMA, but I was addicted to the scene. I couldn't get enough of the scene. I could not wait to get more and more and more and more. And I
right,
was working at the time, and me and my friend Paul, I moved out of home from my mum and dad, and we moved into this place, and we were just raving, going. And this Club Legends was the club in the UK. Nobody can get in there. There was a guy called Denzel on the door,
right.
and he was like St. Peter going through the pearly. You could not get through here. If you got through him, you were in. There's only 500 capacity in there, but it was
Okay,
the club. It was very exclusive. David Bowie being in it. You get some real top people in there, and it was just amazing scene. The vibe. There was a guy called uh the Alex Peterson was the DJ, and it was all the beautiful house tracks then, and this was all new.
right.
And do you know what, it's interesting because before that the football violence was a big thing. The ecstasy scene wiped all the violence out because suddenly no one wanted to fight anymore.
Right.
Everyone wanted to take ecstasy and party. So I'm in this club, and I'm getting in it. And I'm now becoming. I'm wearing stripy suits. I'm wearing it. I'm just getting. And we went to Ibiza, and the whole scene was just consuming. And it got to the stage where I literally couldn't work anymore. And we started working for, attempting to work for myself, but I didn't do a particularly good job because I'm still, just bouncing off the wall. So
Right.
in the end, it consumed me, and I had to step away from it. And it was probably, looking back now, I did this quite often. I moved out. I moved completely away from the scene, disappeared for a while, which you could do. There was no mobiles or phones then, and that was also made the scene so amazing because nobody could contact you, so
Right.
you could just disappear. So I disappeared, um, and just started resetting myself. And I started up. That's when I started working I was in property, but I started buying flats and built up quite a that was probably coming in late 20s. So I raved pretty hard through my 20s, coming up to my 30s. I sort of got my head down, started working. I built up quite an empire, built up quite a big property empire.
Okay.
Um, Up from 30 to 40, I did very, very well. Um, and then I'll never forget from 30 to 40. I remember my 40th birthday. I was dating this girl called Suzanne at the time, and she did a party for me. I remember having this moment at the party thinking, Paul, because obviously I did all my pills and drugs in my 20s, and I worked in my 30s and built up quite a decent empire.
Right.
I remember hitting 40, and there was someone offered me a line of cocaine. She'd rented out this beautiful house in the middle of West End, a big warehouse, and all. It was like a surprise party and friends there. So I did a line of this cocaine,
Yes.
and it didn't really affect me very well, to be honest. It didn't affect me at all. I did it, and you got the feelings of, it was nothing really. But I think with cocaine is once you've taken it, it's like it was dormant. It was dormant. It was there, and then I'd go out and eventually, I'd do a line here and a line there. It wasn't never really out of control. I'd had it under control. Um, and I started to, yeah, it was that was probably the beginning of quite a real struggle, a real battle, because as I said with cocaine, it has its times when it's very dormant, and times it was strong, and it started really at that date, my 40th birthday. So I had some real problems with it because with cocaine, it kind of will celebrate with you. And so what happened? Everyone around me was doing it. By then, it's a bit like if you think of whatever circle you're in, if you're drinking, you'd be around drinking people. But everybody around me started doing it. It become very acceptable. And the thing with cocaine, I think, is it's like a big net, and it will sweep through people, and it will catch certain people that shouldn't take it. And I was one of those people that shouldn't have taken it. Some people can take it. I think you get three types of users. You get the person who can take it and leave it, and those I find it's astonishing. They can actually do a line and a couple of lines and leave it, and then even take the coke home and leave it for another 3 or 4 weeks, which for me is like, it doesn't seem possible. Then you get the functional users, and these are people that can realize they've got a problem, and they cope with it. So they're taking it, maybe a gram or 2 grams a day, and they can work and operate with it. And then you have the bingers, which I wasn't a binger at the beginning, but I certainly became one.
Right.
And the binging was very dangerous because with a binger is that you are taking it, and then you go to this thing of, I'll never do it again, I'll never do it again. And then what happens is you end up doing it again. So you end up going on this loop. I call it looping. So you're going round the track, never going to do it, never going to do it, then you do it again. And you're going round and round and round. It's like being in a stadium, just going round and round and round.
Right.
And you can't get out, and you're stuck in this loop. And there's times you'll go for a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, and then you go again. And when you go again, and the trouble with that is that when you go back in again, it gets really very dangerous. And I had sort of certain times. My mother passed in 2015, and that's when I think it accelerated because the cocaine. I gave it a name. It was like a demon for me. I'd called him Hector. His name was Hector, and the way Hector would come out would be through alcohol. So you would drink. If you drink it, that would loosen the cage. He had a cage, and he'd come out the cage and he'd whisper in your ear, and he'd, come on, just one, just one. No, 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 just one. But the beer would loosen the cage, and he'd get out and he'd whisper in your ear, and then I'd be ordering one. And before I've ordered one, I'd be ordering three.
Right.
And then I'd be out for a couple of days, and it would be complete destruction. I mean, it was a narcissistic me. I want more of this, more of everything. And I was I was making quite a lot of money at the time, so it was getting serviced. The cocaine fiend was getting serviced because I didn't have to get up. And the thing is, when I'd go on these benders, I didn't want to come out the benders because I didn't want reality to come in. So that's why I'd push on for days and days, and it would just be carnage. And then as if I could see what was going on with the chaos, but I wasn't in control. Hector was in control. That was my demon, my cocaine demon.
Right.
And this went on for some time, to the stage where it would go, it would it would be okay, and then it would be gone. I had it gone for a while. Um, by this time, I'd met someone. I've had my son Isaac. So over that time, I went for a period. I didn't touch it for a while, and it was okay. And I was in a strong place, and I thought I've got this under control. Um, and then it was slipped back. I had a place in Ibiza, so you'd party in Ibiza, and I'd get on it out there, and a bit. It would always be there. And I think you can never just put it aside. You can't just go, I'm just going to do it occasionally. If you're a binger, if you can't, you've just got to iron it out and get rid of it. You can't just go, I'll put it there for a bit. Apart
Right.
from those people that really can. And if you're a functional user, or you're a binger like myself, then you can't do that. So it had its moments, and in 2015 it went crazy, and like really, really crazy. And it's a sneaky, sneaky drug because it will whisper in your ear.
Right.
Come on, Paul. Me and you, mate. Come on. You've had a bad time. Come on. We're only going to get one. I promise you. I promise you. This was after alcohol. Now, people say we don't drink. Well, I did that. I didn't drink for some time. And what happened when I didn't drink, and I thought I can have a drink now. Hector came back, but this time he was scared. He said, "Come on, just get one." But he went mad because he was scared he's never going to come out again. Now that sounds insane. It's insanity. So he came out and we went so hard at it. Now I'm going out for 2 days, chain smoking, girls here, girls there, calling everything I could get on. Me, going absolutely ballistic, heart pounding, nose bleeding, other nostril, sniffing that line, Xanax, Valium to the stage. And then I'd 2, 3 days, I'd crawl myself back into a taxi, go back to where my son and my partner was, walk through the door, can't speak to you, straight into the room, 2 or 3 days in bed, just absolute chaos. And this went on for some time. Eventually, I met someone, a girl that friend who was also was partying, and she calmed that down. She said, I ended up marrying this girl, Mariana. So I was sort of seeing this girl, and I had someone to party with, and that sort of calmed it down. So for a while, I think it was okay, but I was going through. I think I was quite spiritually bankrupt. I think spiritually, I had money, I had everything I wanted. I've got this son, but I just couldn't. I wasn't connecting. I wasn't tuning into anything that was significant. I felt I was quite lost. And I always had this feeling of something, I don't know, when things are good around you, you have this sort of imposter syndrome thing. Anyway, I got involved in a project in the West End, and with a it was a good, supposedly good friend. I think when you're not tuned in, and you're dancing, and I think cocaine's definitely a devil's real strong. It's a devil's drug. If the devil could have a drug, it would be cocaine, because it creates the opposite of who you are. Anyone who has a problem will know that the things they're doing, it's like these shame, and it just creates such devilish behavior, and it makes you, and you will attract. See, I think you attract serpents. I call them two-headed serpents. You attract bad people. So I had a friend of mine who was supposed to be a friend, and I was breaking up with my son's mother, and I was out with the other girl, and and I was just not tuned in. I need to make more money because now my son's going in private school. I've got this big house to pay for, and I've got this other life I'm going for. And I was still just spiritually not tuned in. And this so-called friend came over, and he got me involved in this project, and it was bridging loans and this loans, and then everything fell apart. My empire started collapsing quite rapidly. I got involved in a project in the West End. It didn't do what it was supposed to have done. I found out my friend was nicking money, and he was getting commissions, and I was getting dragged me into all these bridging companies where he was getting loans. They were supposed to be friends, and this would never have happened if I was clean-headed and I was, not up to any mischief. And what happened then? I was married then. I married. Not many people know this, but I got married to this girl. She was. I mean, we were partying together. It was flying all around the world, doing amazing things. When that stopped, she was like, "See you later, mate. I'm off." So I was now losing all my flats because I've got all these second charges on my properties, and the bridging loans were coming in, taking the flats, and it was just as during COVID. And COVID came in, and my son, I hadn't seen him for a while. So, well, before then, so basically things started falling apart, and I was now in a house in Camden. I was spending an awful lot of time by myself. So my wife had gone. My relationship with my son's mother was terrible. We were going to family court because she was thinking I've got all this money, which I hadn't. Suddenly, I hadn't. At one minute I had loads of money, now I haven't, and she was thinking I must be hiding money. I've got this relationship, so we were getting. I was going to court with her, and I was less resistant for the demon Hector. I was starting to sniff a lot more. This was a time when come on, Paul, just me and you. You're having a bad time. There's no one around. So I started sniffing really rapidly. Not rapidly is the right word. I started, yeah, getting. I wasn't resistant as much, and I started getting on these massive benders, and I was by myself. And I remember taking Xanax and Valium, and then afterwards going into this depression, because after, if anyone knows with cocaine, you have to the come down, and the come down is pretty brutal. Now, I've now realised I'm now getting come suffering from depression because of things are falling apart, life's falling apart. I'm more scared, so I'm worried about what's going on, I'm worried about the future, I'm worried about what's going to happen. Um, so it sent me into depression, and I realised then that the coke was sort of being a sort of it would stop all the pain, but it'd stop it for a period of time, and then you'd come back with the come downs would come in, and after that I'd have massive depression, like just because I'm stuck and I'm angry that I got on it again. I'll be angry with the problem, and I start having some very, very dark thoughts, very dangerous thoughts. And I think anyone who's gone through that stage, I think that's the thing with cocaine, because when you've got problems, there's always like a, with depression, you kind of, if the depression's bad, but with cocaine, it magnifies. So everything that's wrong is now twice as bad, and your brain starts to try and look for an exit, give you an option, and the options are quite. The option it was giving you is tapping out. Now I hadn't seen my son for some time, and he, because of COVID, and I managed to see him, and I remember seeing him at the bottom of the stairs in my house in Camden, and that he sort of seen me, was sort of talking, and must have seen something in my face, and he grabbed hold of me. This was probably the pivotal moment, and he wouldn't let go. I must have been about 9 at the time. He just grabbed hold of me, and he could see something in my face, and he wouldn't let go. And I remember from that next day, I mean, I cried. I mean, I don't mind being ashamed to admit, but I remember crying crying a lot that night, just crying, thinking I have to change what you think in your fucking life, man. You need to change this. And it wasn't. I always thought it was the next day. It's about a few days later. I got a call from a friend of mine, Jay, because I had a house in Ibiza then, which I lost that now. I lost it at the time because of the carnage. But I had some friends there, and he had gone through a 12-step program, and I told him that I'm going through it, and he understood. He said, "Look, you need to get out of London. Just get out of London." In between all the COVID chaos, there was a little break, so I managed to get a flight out to Ibiza, and it was the north of the island, and it was a caravan. Now, one thing that was weird, actually, I'll say this, I'll add that in a bit. So I stayed in this caravan, and it was right by the ocean. It was literally by the ocean on this site, and there was only hippies in that. It sounds like it's like I'm writing a story, but it truly happened, and it was beautiful, and it was by the ocean, and there was just nothing around. I smoked a few joints there, and there was hippies about, but that really helped me. And I remember there was weird little things which really helped. So I was sort of away from everything, away from London. Um, and I'd sort of, before my cocaine binges, I'd take pictures of myself after the binges to try and convince my future self not to do it again, and say, look what you're doing to yourself. So I'd take pictures of myself, of me looking absolutely broken. And I'd make recordings just begging myself not to do it again, begging myself, don't go down that road, begging myself that if you carry on doing this, you're going to kill yourself, because I came close to it a very few times. And it was just a reaching out to myself to say, don't do it, don't do it.
Right.
But I remember going to the thing. So I was sort of starting to take little notes of stuff, of recording of how I felt. And I remember going to the place in the caravan, and I started to write, and this is probably the genesis of the book. I started writing the book, and that's when it came. I started writing about it started mainly about me really trying to search for a solution of where I was going and what I was doing, and I was sort of comparing myself to, like, looking at sort of philosophy and Freud, and just looking at trying to work out, not just trying to work out what was going on in my head. I think being in Ibiza in that time, the one thing I've learned is that when there's chaos around you, you're constantly you're fearful about the future, you're upset about the past, and it's like the phone would ring. I'd be scared of the phone ringing because of so much bad news from this little device. So my heart would pounding, and the only escape was going on these cocaine benders. And what I preferred with the cocaine benders was the fact I could sleep for 3 or 4 days and be in this dream world. which was better than reality, and reality would come up, and that's when it was dangerous. But
Right.
Ibiza, being clean, not I was still drinking a bit there, but I wasn't taking any drugs apart from weed. And then I started writing a book. I remember really, and I'd mentioned this before in a previous podcast, that I one thing I really remembered was the ants. There was ants in this caravan. I remember just there was bits of bread, French stick, and they'd pick the stick up and walk around, and I'd spend hours just looking at these ants. And I found that really healthy, just to look at the most minor, just weird little things like that. Just the ants and these are things you do as when I was a kid. My mum used to, when we was camping, she'd put these jars just and stab the top of the honey jar so the wasps would get in. I'd look at the wasp getting stuck in, and just weird stuff like that. And so I started getting more tuned in, and um, and I decided then, I knew obviously for Isaac, my son, that moment was very pivotal for him when he held me. I knew I had to make some adjustments, and I started on my journey, and I've started my journey, and I know that I was spiritually bankrupt 100%, and I think that being stuck in that loop, which I call the loop, and I think that you can get a loop not just with cocaine. A cocaine loop is brutal, but people get it with alcohol. You can get it with many things where you're just stuck in that loop. And I've come out of that now. It's taken a long time to come out of that because I know I'll never ever. Hector now, the Hector demon is gone, and it started off with that, and I started exercising and training. I was out there for about 3 months. I actually went and got my son, and he came over, but he was like, "I don't like these insects, Dad," which was just hilarious, actually. But we had some time there. But I had to stay there, and I was training out there. And it's ironic because Ibiza for me was a real party island before, but
Right.
Ibiza at this time looked after me, and I was training out there, and I was finding myself, and I started writing this book, Beautiful Chaos. Um, and then when I got back to London, I had a few relapses, but I understood now that I'd created a new pathway. There's something else that I'd found, the more I was going down, it's a bit like a bit like a. I always put it like this: in the morning, right? This is quite deep. You get up in the morning, and you've got mildewed in the morning on a field, and you go across that mildew. Walk across it, and they're footsteps. You don't want to go across it because it's a bit wet. You go across it, and you do it again and again and again and again, and then that creates the pathway. And that's what's happened, I think, with exercise and training. Before, it's not something I want to do, and more and more and more. And the other pathway with cocaine and other things, those pathways are instant, and that's the thing, because cocaine is an instant. The endorphin loads your brain, and it's instant. The other pathway, you'll get endorphin, but it's a lot. The trail is a lot harder, but it's much better for you. In spiritually, it's much better for you. Physically, it's much better for you. But it's the long way. It's the long way to get there. But to get on that pathway, you've got to come out the stadium of the loop. So once you're out the stadium and you're into the world, then you have access to these things. It's like you can't tune into that frequency with the devil's drug, the devil's poison, and you can't tune into it. You can tune into it when you're no longer looping, and you can take it to different levels. You can tune into it. The frequency's louder when you don't drink. You don't do, if you do everything right, things start to happen, and the book started taking pace. My exercises become now, and I understand the connection between obsession and addiction.
Right.
Like I know now that I've shifted now 100%. I now would say probably addicted to training. I train now. I've got Whoop data, and I can see where I'm coming up with other people, but I train to such that most people would have a problem. Not I cannot not train, but the beauty of it is I'm the supplier and the user. So I understand it. I understand the connection between the two. And I also understand where the addiction I had with cocaine, and the fact that this journey I'm on now, how healthy it is, and I've got such a better view of addiction. When I look at people, like if you look at, say, Mike Tyson, when he was training, he would definitely cost him hard and would have got him addicted to being in a phenomenal fight. He was addicted. But also, he would have come out of that, girls, cocaine, partying, dun, dun, bam, bam, bam. Tiger Woods, the same.
Oh,
Anyone who's got that trait, there is that addiction trait. it's got such a bad PR because it's rightly it should do. It's caused massive destruction. But if
Yes.
understood, you can harness it. If understood, if used it. I look at the bingers especially because you got, I said you get the functional users, they plod along, no problem. You get the functional users, big problem because they're carrying on and it would cause, but the bingers are the ones that are going on. I know I can see my behaviors growing up where I can connect the two because now like I cannot not I train
Right.
and I feel the similar thing. I can feel the similar thing. Apart from I've got control of the reins, so I can control the horses. Whereas cocaine, you're not in control of the reins. You're in the chariot, and those
Yep.
horses, you've got no reins, and it's charging around the place. And Hector's the one who's on the Hector's the one who's is in control. My
Yeah.
brain now, Paul controls that. So yeah, I've just started. From there, I've just been on this journey of an understanding. I'm now speaking to you. I'm speaking to other people, and I've just been. I've got friends of mine that've reached out that has been discussing that sort of have had. I found out have got their own problems,
Right.
and I put the book to. I managed to get a ghostwriter guy called Nicholas Brooks. He's a really clever lad who managed to sort of restructure the book. And it's been going on for about just over 5 years. Been writing this book and explaining my story and my journey. This is sort of a bit of a microwave version of it, but certainly that's pretty much my life and where I am at the moment. And here I am speaking to you.
So, would you say your life, in short, is Paul versus Hector? Would you say, summing it up, it was that type of life from your youth all the way to now? It was Paul versus Hector, or you feel like at times you were maybe dancing with the devil, you like on the edge, but you were able to pull yourself back just in time, not to go too deep off the deep end?
I think Hector came was with only one time came, he developed himself. Hector came because of cocaine.
Yeah.
Cocaine was there. Hector was it's an interesting question because there is parts of that my behavior now which are connected, and so it's
Yeah.
interesting you pick that up. It's very smart of you picking it up because there
Thank
are
you.
there are relations to that in my behavior now. But I would say to anybody that if you have got this demon, and I like to say I've got rid of Hector, which I believe I have, because I think by naming it, it's easy to get rid of it. I think the
Right.
problem sometimes because there's so much guilt with addiction. When someone's gone out on these horrible, horrible benders, they've let loads of people down. They've not because you're consumed by it, but it's all them. They feel guilty because it's them. And I think if you can give it a name, I don't know why I did it, and everyone knew who Hector was, but I gave it a name. By
Right.
giving him a name, it was easy as knowing that it's something I had to get rid of. And the fact I didn't like it, if I went out and I saw Hector, I wouldn't like him, even though it was me.
Right.
So by having that separation has helped me to annihilate him. Now I know Hector, I know from my heart of hearts, he will never come back. I will never touch a line of cocaine ever again. No way in a million years. I could not think of anything more disgusting. I would never touch it again. He's gone.
Right.
But I think the fact that you say he's gone. So by saying he's gone, he may have a cousin now. Is the I don't know. Let's call him Arthur. Arthur's the one who was now addicted to go to the gym, but they're not the same people. They
Right.
are. Arthur's in control. He'll say, Paul, listen, mate, you need to take it easy. You're aching a little bit. We're not there to train to burn. You're training now to get fit. You've got your VO2 levels. You've got your you've got to eat well, clean well. I'm addicted to getting like as healthy as I can. You've got to do your swim. I don't want to. Little voice. You don't want to do it. I'm too tired today. I don't
Right.
care. We're strong. We've made that pathway. Remember the pathway? I've made that pathway. The pathway's strong now. It was a few little steps, and now it's a proper trail. Now the other pathways, the cocaine pathway, that's gone. It's just this pathway now, but it takes time. It's like a big wheel, and I'm pushing it and pushing it, and now I get my fix from there. I'm the user and the supplier, and I get my fix from it. So yes, they are similar, but they're not the same.
Right.
Hector was a demon, a narcissist demon. This guy now, he can have a conversation on Sunday afternoon with Dez. No
Yeah.
problem. The other dude would be in bed Get up Tuesday, and anybody who says after a week they're brand new, that's another thing. Oh, I'm brand new, and it took me a week to get back. It's rubbish. It's not. It takes months and months to get yourself going, to be able to tune in, to be able to accept the thing. I'm doing things now because I'm no longer in the loop, no longer in the stadium. I've broken out into the world, and now I've access to things that it's spiritually and creatively, which I never knew existed because I don't have hangovers. I get up. I don't need to be around people. I don't need people. I love, I'm very careful who I have around and who I speak to and what people have in who of their energy, whether it be good or bad. I'm very careful about that. Therefore, I was letting all the two-headed serpents in my life, the demons, all the people around, the bad, and I was the energy vampires. I was having that around me. Party, going here, flying there. No, no, no. I didn't know who I was.
Right.
Now I feel more confident. Yes, of course I have my nerves about stuff, but I have confidence to do it. It's before I didn't have that because now I'm tuned into someone who I'm meant to be. So going back to your point, yes, they are, and it's the first person who's mentioned that, and I love that. They
Yep.
are, they are definitely connected. And I've first experienced it with the rave scene. Like I said, MDMA was not addictive, but I got addicted to the scene. So I understand that thing. Now, this thing I'm doing now, like I know that it's there, but I feel it's healthy and I can tune in like a radio. I've had some very unusual things happening, amazingly unusual, spiritually mad thing. I don't want to go into too much depth because I don't want to sound like a lunatic. But some strange things have happened, and I feel comfort in these things that happening. And it feels I feel I've dialed in something. It's like a current. I feel that as a current is drawing me in. I'm still things aren't perfect for me at the moment, but I have less fear, and I feel, I said I've finished this book now, and it's I've I've not studied anything, but I've had an awful lot of field work. I've experienced many emotions. I remember fear. My first experience was fear when I was a child, and my mother sat when I was about 7. Tower Hamlets social service used to come round,
Right.
and my parents used to spoil me before they used to come round. They spoiled me because they that social service. I said the wrong thing, they could take me away. So that's my first experience of fear because I used to be scared that if I said anything wrong, they'll take me from this family who I loved, and this was my brothers and sisters.
Right.
But they were there to check to make sure this child, black child in the family, is he okay? Has there been any abuse? And that was my first experience of fear. So I've experienced many emotions. Um, and I understand, the importance of peace, like peace and being able to being able to find out who you are. I think I think lots of people in life. Do you know what I tried to do? It's a weird thing actually.
Okay.
On a Sunday, this is the only day I don't do this because I actually thought it was a Monday, so I'm not today, but it's a Sunday. Sundays, I tend to leave my phone. I like to leave my phone home and I turn the phone off. I don't answer the phone. I don't read books. I just go out and I say this, I learnt that from the caravan in thing. And I live near the river. I walk by the river. No music, no nothing, just me and my brain. I try and spend as much time. It's a lot harder than you think it is,
Right.
but just doing that thing, spending time and just finding out yourself, because a lot of people's lives are so stressful. There's stuff going on. We've got devices here, devices there, problems with work, problems with this, problems with governments, bad governments, wars, world wars, this war. There's so much information flying at us.
Right.
And I think many years ago when we were kids, Sunday was a religious day. Not that this is a religious reason, but I like the fact the shops were closed and you could hear bells ringing in the town. There was nothing open, where now everything's opened and everyone's just got so much going on. I find it really is just having that day and spending some time. It's probably part of some ways of meditating, but it's not difficult. It's not meditating with your legs crossed and humming at a Buddha. Just spending some time alone. And I've learned that. I think you've got to be careful again that you don't become addictive because you never come into total recluse. But
Right.
I think there's things I've learned, and I'm just learning. I just open there's stuff I've now as a boy, you become a boy, then you become a teenager. Now, I see the jump from teenager to man. My son's going through that at the moment. But I
Yep.
think there is another jump for certain men. I think, you know, I'd say you've probably made that jump. The fact you've got this podcast, the fact you've created that, the something
Yep.
you've done, you've made that jump. I think there is that. Doesn't matter how much money you got or how what you've got. There's another jump. It's spiritually related, where you can jump from a boy, from a man, to something else. Now,
Yep.
I've made that jump before the chaos that I had and the losses and the depression and me writing this book and going on the journey I've done. I've now jumped to become something else, and like life suddenly has become more rewarding. I find, I go to bed at 8 o'clock. I get up at 5 o'clock. I got a good routine, and I'm finding I'm just getting access to parts of my brain which I'm finding just exciting. And I know that the reason that is because I'm no longer looping. I'm
Right.
no longer in that stadium. I'm out in the world. I'm now having access to things, which, that's the reason why I'm speaking to Dez Experience on a Sunday afternoon, talking about it. I mean, this to me is, you know, something I could never, ever, ever imagine in, Hector at his fully charged reign. He was the dictator, and for me to suddenly look here now, I'd be like thinking, thank God I've managed to to get rid of him, and I'm here now, and I'm talking about what we're talking about. So, um, yeah, it's interesting,
I just want to
pretty deep
say,
stuff,
man.
right?
Yeah. Just want to say, man, before I continue, I'm very proud of you, man. Like,
Thank you very much.
it's not easy. You definitely went through different phases of your life. In each chapter, you went from Paul, Hector, Arthur. Like, you going through different chapters, different phases, different personalities, and
Yes,
it's amazing to see who you become today. So I definitely
thank
want
you.
to
It's
say,
very kind of you, man.
yep,
Appreciate that.
absolutely. The questions I was going to ask, you answered almost all of them already while me asking.
There you go. I'm a natural. I'm a natural. Boo, 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 boo.
I was like,
Straight out.
wait a minute. I'm looking, I'm like, he's
Yeah.
answered all of
Dew, 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 dew.
them.
Call me Clint.
But the one question that I do have that you haven't answered yet is, what
Hmm.
advice would you give to someone standing at the edge like you once were, now, currently?
I would say to them, "M- the earth is the most. If you can get someone, go some. You've got to go somewhere quiet because a lot of it is you're getting. There's lots of noise and chaos. And you just got to get away somewhere. Even if you're in New York, just go for a walk at night where there's nothing around. You could leave your phone, get somewhere where there's either your eyes need exercise, where you're actually somewhere, and it's really important where your eyes can actually exercise. When I say exercise, where you've got a view, people got to think about the value of views is where you can look into what's going on. Because
Right,
when you're in that place, it's chaos and it's your brain and you also got to understand, don't believe your brain. What your brain is telling you there now is not the truth, because you can't find the truth until you're out of the loop. So
right,
everything is going on, so you've got to find that is by finding, being present and finding yourself and really trying to trying to coach yourself. And by doing that, you need to be forest, sand, sea, clouds, trees, somewhere quiet, the Mother Nature, where it's stripped, where it's quiet, and be away. And if you're capable and you've got the means to really jump, don't just make a little jump, make a big jump.
right,
Disappear, find somewhere away from everything, find somewhere in with which is nature, because nature, the earth itself, is an amazing healer. But you've got to make that jump. You really, you've got to stop. And the big problem happened, which I've experienced, which has been amazing, is stop caring about what everybody thinks. Stop caring about people's thoughts and, oh, what if this and what that. You've got to learn to just do what's good for you. You've got to go and just do your thing. It's a freedom to have that. Obviously, you've got people going to be worried about you, but to really truly, I've experienced it a few times. And one thing I've looked back in my life is the one thing I kept on doing was making that jump, just disappearing, but around nature,
right.
around the earth. I mean, look, if you're lucky enough to be near the ocean, the beach, trees, parks, quiet, but be there at a time where it's quiet. You don't want people around, and you want to leave your phone, leave your mobile. If you can spend an hour or 2 hours to start making those steps, as I said, if you make that pathway with the first footsteps, and you do it again, you start creating that pathway. But to do that, it's all to do with rain, sun, sea, sand, ants, just the world, the actual earth. And I think that's really, really helpful. And I don't know whether maybe it's something which is common, but like I said, I've not studied anything, but I've done an awful lot of field work, and I
Right.
had a horrific demon. And another thing, just to finish off, Des, I would say, is to give it a name. If you've got that thing, a lot of it is guilt and shame. Oh my God, what have I done? I've let this person, let that person down. Understand that that demon is not you. That demon, give that hope demon is a name. There's a guy on social service at the moment. His name's Shane
Hmm.
on Instagram, and I watch him, and it really upsets me to see what he's going through. He's living the front line of cocaine addiction. His nose is collapsed. He's now having to have hearing aids because he can't hear properly because he's still sniffing. It's going through some pores into his ears.
Right.
He is fighting, going to programs, really fighting his demon, really fighting it. But he's on the front line of it, and when I see it, I can just see the devastation of it, where it's actually disfiguring your nose is collapsed. It is that dangerous. But for me, I think naming it helps it to be gone, because I know that there's that Hector's gone now.
Right.
But by naming it, I know it's gone. And yes, there are similarities with Arthur. We're going to call him Arthur. The geese is running around now. But
Yeah.
just give it a name and just understand that you've got to. The art of it is to name him and get yourself out the stadium. That's it. Get out the stadium. And if you're going to get out the stadium is beautiful forests and earth and beautifulness. And that's what the beauty of Noah's is so much better out there. If you can
Right.
get out the stadium, you will find out who you are. And if you really, really, and how interesting wouldn't it be to find out who you really are? Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be interesting? So that's what I'd say. Find nature and realize there's beauty out there, not in the stadium.
Sound advice to me.
There you go. There you go.
So, before I continue, this is the point of my pod where I always turn it over to my guests, and you can ask me any
Mm.
question that you want.
Yes, actually, I was going to ask you because you've asked some very interesting questions. You picked some things up.
Yep.
How did you and what made you start become a podcaster?
Oh man, so this is the question everybody likes to ask, man.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry. I thought I was the
No,
originator. Never mind.
no. You can
Okay, right,
ask any question. It's all good. So
right.
I started by listening to like different podcasts, like I still do now. Like I like
Mm.
variety, like sports, business, finance, mystery, any topic. I like, especially I like interesting people who like to talk about different things. So
Right.
that's what
Yes.
got me into podcasting. So at
Mm.
first, I started with just my friends, just to see if I would like doing it or not. And then
Yeah,
over
yeah.
time, I started getting to interview people from like around the world, like you. You're all the way in the UK. I like
Yes.
interviewing people from the states, outside the states. I just like to hear people's like interesting stories, what their backgrounds, like their trials and tribulations, and how they got through the storm, as I like to call it.
Yeah, you're very
So
natural. I'm going to tell you that you're very, very natural. It's been, I mean, I mean, I can talk a lot, but I can sense it's a very natural interview, which is good. I like that. It's just definitely, you've definitely got that thing, which is clearly working.
thank you. I appreciate it, man. But yeah, that's what I got in. That's what got me into it. And 3 years later, and over 200 episodes later, I'm still here, man. I just love interacting with human beings, man. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I really like that. I like that. I think you definitely, you found your niche. You found you're certainly not in the stadium, that's for sure. You're out in the world doing your thing.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I just take it one day at a time, man. That's all I do, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. It's
Absolutely.
good.
So, before we end this, is there any last words you would like to leave with the listeners? And would you like to share your social media handles as well?
Oh, yes, that's very kind of you. My social media is Beautiful Chaos 1966, and you'll find my stories as quite a bit on there. You can see my stories, a few bits of the book. We've got bits of the book in there. Um, I know. I think we're pretty done. I think I think I've said what I feel. Of people going through tough times. Just be aware. Especially especially with the darkest times, when you're going through those dark times, understand that it's like being in a trapeze. When you're in those dark times, there's no safety net, and that's drugs. I don't listen to your brain. Understand that there is change, and just stay in there, man. Keep never give up, and try and find peace. Peace is the most important thing. There's too much. Sometimes there's so much noise going on in people's lives with chaos and chaos and chaos. And really, when I say about being connected with the earth, is try and stop the noise. There's so much noise coming in, and just take care of yourself. Think about yourself. Stop the noise if you can, and the earth will do that.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, I want to say thank you so much once again for accepting an invite to come on the Dez Experience podcast. I truly appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Desmond.
You're welcome. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your early evening.
I will do. I'm going to go for a nice walk now, and I'm going to run through this in my brain. It's been really enjoyable. It's been very, very pleasurable. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. You take care, brother.
You too.
Peace.
Peace.